Okay, I'm sorry about the confusion about this phrase or this expression being towards death. It actually appears in the essay as being unto death, but the meaning is the same. I mean, the idea is that human beings, human existence itself, is structured by the fact that human beings are always, at every moment of their life, headed towards their ultimate death, which for Heidegger means their nothingness. Not towards the idea of a transition to an afterlife, which would be an entirely different notion. No, the being towards death that Heidegger, I think, is talking about is a being towards nothingness, a being towards our finitude, or something that shows up our ultimate finitude as human beings. We're not infinite beings, we're finite beings. We come to an end. And the idea is that if we're going to be true, if we're going to truly know ourselves and know our real situation, we have to acknowledge that ending. We have to acknowledge that our personal existence comes to an absolute end, which is the Epicurean idea that death is nothingness, or death is the point at which we become nothing. We can see the contrast in the responses to that. For Epicurus, that meant, well, don't worry about it. It's nothing. It's not worth your time. Whereas Jaspers and Heidegger are saying, no, it is worth your time, because this experience of dread at our ultimate nothingness is a very, very disturbing experience. And maybe you have to go through that dread to really accept the fact that your life is going to come to an absolute end. Again, when we read Landsberg, it is a Catholic response to this, but we have to sort of let this sink in. I mean, it may be true that the dread that we feel at death is the dread of the prospect of our own non-existence. So one can see why this is quite hard to accept. But why would, again, we get back to the point, why is it worth accepting it? I mean, what do we get out of it? Well, that is an interesting question. It's an interesting story. I think that one of the things that Gray is trying to get at in his analysis of Heidegger is the idea of time. That is, death and time are very closely related concepts. We die because we live in time. That is, we are temporal creatures. We live in time. So our existence unfolds in time. And we think of time schematically as the past, the present, and the future. But the idea is that although we have to conceive of having a past, there being a past, both ourselves and generally the universe having a past, and we conceive of a future, the only thing we ever have really is the present moment. The only thing that we ever really are able to, the place where we live, or the time where we live, is always the present. And what does death have to do with that? Well, let's see, what page are we on? Page 121. I must take as literally true and applicable to me the fact that my death is certain and can take place at any instant. I have no claim on any but the present moment. On it, however, I have an absolute claim. It can be wholly mine. Okay. Now, what are we talking about there? Well, okay, we're in the present. We're always in the present. But we're always trying to get away from the present. Why is it that we're sort of losing ourselves in the past, psychologically rooted in the past, or anticipating the future? We're always sort of trying to get away from the past. Well, there's something very disturbing about the present. To be open to the present, to be open to the present moment, is to be open to my own existence in its truth and reality. But if I were to be open to my own existence, I have to be open to the possibility of my own death. That is, the suggestion is, I think, that to really live in the moment, is to be open to reality, to be open to the present. But that entails being open to death. Because if I look at my existence, I see that that's where I'm heading. Could be at any moment, could be sometime in the future, but it is there at every moment. So an openness to the truth of human existence requires an openness to nothingness, to death. Very powerful idea, right? Very powerful idea. That the suggestion is that the price we pay for truth is acceptance of death, and that perhaps the motivation for our willingness or our unwillingness to accept truth is because we don't want to accept death. Very general idea. You have to do a lot of analysis of it to see if it really pans out, but a very powerful idea. And to some people, it sort of explains everything. There was a book back in the 70s by Ernest Becker, American thinker, called The Denial of Death. And the idea there was that everything that human beings do in some way is motivated by their fear of death. Not just avoiding death physically, but avoiding it psychologically. That many of the things that we do, making money, having affairs, having great accomplishments in sports or business or intellectual accomplishments, it all is kind of a pathetic attempt to deny our mortality. And by publishing that book, you become immortal. It's an illusion. By winning the Super Bowl, or your team winning a Super Bowl, you become immortal. It's an illusion. So this notion that we're constantly running away from the truth about ourselves because we're constantly running away from death, from the reality of death, is a very powerful idea. Again, whether it's true or not, I don't know. But you can see why death becomes central to Heidegger, because the acceptance of death is kind of the precondition for the realization of any truth. And as long as it would seem that we're committed to truth. So we're committed to a full awareness and acceptance, not acceptance of being happy about it, but acceptance of the reality of our finitude, of our ultimately becoming nothing.